Hello everyone, this is Sam Sky, the Ignition Coach at Curious Entrepreneurs, and welcome to another episode of the Curious Entrepreneur podcast. Today I am with the amazing Georgia Murphy from Bidwells, and I will let her introduce herself to you now. But most importantly, obviously, if you've enjoyed previous episodes and hopefully enjoy this one, please leave a review on our Spotify account and a little rating. It helps massively reach other people. But I'll hand over to Georgia to introduce herself to you, and then we'll get rolling.
Yep. So, hello everyone. I am Georgia. I work for Bidwells in the talent acquisition team. I'm an assistant. I started off as an apprentice.
Nice. So, if you didn't know already, Bidwells are working closely with us.
Yes.
And we can obviously speak about what that program looks like and all the amazing activities we can do. Yeah. But I want this podcast to be about you as well. So, kind of, where did obviously you've been on a journey so far and it got to where you are now.
Yeah.
I want to almost go back a little bit and speak about how you got there.
Okay.
And we'll start with education. So, what was your experience of education and your relationship with it, and how did it serve you?
So I think education is difficult for everybody. I got on well with it. It was okay. I had friends at school. I enjoyed going to school and being social. But maybe like the learning side of things, I struggled a little bit more with. Okay. I liked going into secondary school and doing my GCSEs and stuff. I had like the best time ever and like enjoyed hanging out with my friends. But actual learning, I found that focus and having that interest in what we were actually studying really difficult. Okay. So concentrating and stuff like that, it just wasn't natural to me. I got okay grades. I got off with I think 8 GCSEs or something like that, and they were all above passes, but there was never a point where I was like, this is my favourite subject and this is what I'm going to focus on and this is what I'm going to be amazing at. I struggled to have that sort of drive. Revision, I did revision, but I never sort of found a way that would make me remember it. I'd try and make pretty notes and stuff like that. But I never got to a point where I was like, yes, this is it. Like, I love school now, like, into my learning and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. Cool.
I had a similar experience. When I was at school, I was just a bit of a yes man. I just kind of like, now got on with it. Cause a bit like stuff with my background in football. If football had to come first, then education. So I was a bit of a yes man, but I was exactly the same as you. Like, especially in regards to the revision aspect of things, like when I was at school, sometimes we had those sessions like, this is how to revise. But my way of learning how to revise was, I literally used to do look cover copy, and it was really bad. Yes. And I literally was on like the day before my exams, I would just do look cover copy. It served me to get the grades, but it hasn't served me. I've got no recognition of any of the knowledge that I've put into my brain after that. Yeah. So if you could go back to school but create it as you would want, what would you want school to look like for like your 16-year-old self?
I think for me, I'd like to go back and do things a bit differently. Like I would probably work a bit harder now that I look back, but I think if there was more things that I could do physically, so like actually go and do something to help me learn. So I think I need to go and like, I don't know, like do an activity or like improvise or something like that to make me realise, like, process what's actually going on, like rather than sitting and looking in a textbook. Like I cannot take the information in. I'm just looking at it and it's not like processing at all. I remember like before, I think it was my biology exam or something, we were about to go in 5 minutes before and my friend went, oh yeah, so about that, and I went, what are you talking about? I was like, I've never heard of that topic before because I just didn't remember anything. Right, okay. So I was a bit of a nightmare. So I feel like I'm a more of a doer. Like I need to do like an activity or something to help me pick it up a little bit more. Nice. But
so like there's that thing like kinetic. I think it's called kinetic learning. So like you learn through doing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I think that's the only one of the things that I found with education was that I think you can almost learn theory through doing. Like actually learn activity, find out well, you'll learn through that activity anyway, like about getting it right or potentially learning from it. But then I think maybe the theory, it'd be quite interesting if you had action and then you learnt the theory after, rather than doing the theory before, because then actually the action allows you to reflect on.
Yeah, it makes so much more sense. Like, yeah, definitely.
Cool. So that's quite interesting to obviously find that about yourself, because we'll come on to it later about the doing that we'll be doing in a couple of months' time. Yeah. So what did life look like once you'd finished your exams?
So after my GCSEs, I feel like everybody was just like, yeah, let's go sixth form. Like everybody wanted to do the same thing and go and study 3 A-levels and then go to university. I jumped on the bandwagon. I was like, okay, I'll go and do my A-levels and whatever. And I did English, business and design technology, like the fashion focus in that.
Okay.
And I did enjoy that particular exam, like doing all of the fashion and stuff like that. But I just went and did my A-levels because that's what everybody else was doing, and I didn't sort of look into the other options that might have been available for me. So people sometimes jump straight into an apprenticeship or like full-time work or something, but I just thought, right, all my mates are doing it, I'm going to go with them. So I went to do the A-levels and I got about a year and a bit in, and it was like lockdown suddenly. Everyone was like, COVID gone mental. Yeah, so we were all told to stay at home, and we didn't really know what was going to happen, like because the teachers didn't know. So we didn't know, should we still be revising? Are we going to sit our exams? And we ended up getting our predicted grades, which probably didn't do me any favours, because in that first year, I tried, but again, I shouldn't have, made that decision to go to do my A-levels because the focus just was never there for me. Like I struggled to then again take in even more information, even like more difficult topics and stuff. So I did okay. I got okay grades, but I wasn't necessarily like happy with them. And after that I was like, okay, what now? Because I've done this and I don't want to go to university because I can't do any more learning. Like clearly it's not for me. So I just sort of fell into, I was already working part-time at Waitrose. So I said, I need to fill my time. I can't just sit at home all day. Mum would literally be getting so annoyed with me. So I decided to go full-time and just work. And it was at the time like probably the best thing that I could have done, because I was with all my friends and so many people went through that difficult, couple of years not being able to see anyone. I had that luxury because all my friends worked there at the same time as me. So yeah, I just continued working there. I tried to get a management position because that was the best option. Didn't get it. So I was just like, you know what, I'm not enjoying this. After like a couple of years of being there, I was like, right, I'm ready to move on now. Like, and that's sort of where I found Bidwells.
Okay. So then talk to me about that journey then. So how did you become aware of Bidwells?
So I think it was when lockdown had eased up a little bit at some point. I think it was like early 2021 sort of time. It was like everything had calmed down a little bit through that bit. And I was saying to my mum, like, I'm really not enjoying myself, what I'm doing, and I'm not like happy. I just wanted to find something that motivated me, and I had a drive and I had like passion for, and I ended up I'd obviously go to work full time, and I don't know if she was on furlough or not, but she used to sit at home, bless her, and she would look at the different vacancies for me, and I'd come home and she'd be like, look at this one, this is amazing, this would be so good for you, you're so chatty, you're a people person. And there was a couple with Bidwells, and I knew someone that worked there already, and Mum was like, I think you'd be amazing at this. This is like so people driven and it just sounds like an amazing opportunity. So it was, at the time, I think they called it a recruitment apprenticeship. So that is essentially what I applied for. And obviously having a contact there was beneficial because she went and spoke to the team and said, I know this girl, she's keen, whatever. And I got an interview and was successful. So I just sort of fell into the role from there. And I absolutely love it. Like, I loved it as soon as I started. I thought it was so exciting, so professional, like a new environment. So yeah, I got there eventually.
Nice. So how did that interview process go? Because I think obviously part of your role now, which we'll come into in a bit, you can obviously provide your tips on how to do a great interview.
Yeah.
But how did your first interview go with Bidwells?
I'm a strong believer that I will know if something's right for me or not, like when I'm there. So I had this feeling before I went, and I'm quite on edge, like I'll get a little bit nervous for things like that. I just felt so at ease, and I was like, this is right. Like, it was very strange. Like, don't get me wrong, like it's normal to get nervous. Yeah. But I just thought, okay, this is like a good environment. Like, it looks amazing. Just go for it. Like, this is your opportunity. So I got in, and it was another boss that I had at the time who interviewed me. And she was very welcoming. The office is quite quiet because a lot of people were working from home at the time still. So she literally just sat me down and said, like, I want you to be yourself. And we had just a chat. Like, it wasn't like an intense interview. And we got on so well. And I think that really helped me, obviously, because we sort of had a bit of a friendship as well as like a work relationship. And she was just asking me all sorts of questions sort of about like myself, because when you've only worked in a supermarket, sometimes it can be difficult to give examples of how you would do things differently in that role, because it doesn't quite transfer over. But so we just had a chat, and a couple of days later she rang me and was like, oh, I'd like to offer you the job. And I was absolutely thrilled. Like, I literally started crying when she told me I had it. I was so happy.
So talk to us about that, because we had a little conversation earlier about that. How did you approach that conversation about your experience in the past? Because obviously a lot of young people listening and watching this, they aren't going to, potentially, some of them might not have even qualifications, and then some of them might not have loads of experience behind them to showcase that to an employee. But from like, even from experience, you've said even like stuff at Waitrose, there's characteristics that you'll develop there, they're actually really useful for a role. So how did you promote that for yourself in the interview? But then with what the knowledge you know now, what advice would you provide a young person with?
I'd say, obviously, like when you're creating your CV, like you say, going in for interview is so difficult when you're at that early stage and you don't have that background and the knowledge and the skill set or whatever. I think what I would do, I remember sitting down like before I went into the interview, because I didn't know what to expect, and I'd written like the job experience I had. So it was like Waitrose. I'd been a salon girl in on a Saturday at like a local hairdresser's. I think I'd had a paper round and done like Duke of Edinburgh Gold Bronze Award. So I'd literally pinpointed anything that I could like take from my background and stuff. Like, even if it's like the smallest thing, like the littlest job, you do develop skills. Like when I first started like that paper round back when I was like 14, I was so shy, but then I wasn't afterwards, because I'd literally had to throw myself into this little shop and chat to this lady and say, oh, can you give me a job, by the way? Like, is that okay? And it grew my confidence so much. So I'd say if you can write down all of your work history or any of your achievements, and then bullet point underneath like how that's going to benefit you in this new role and what skills you've developed. So like, for example, I don't know, Waitrose, you've got to have amazing customer service, which I still need now when I'm talking to a candidate. So just little things like that, like making sure that you're prepared is really important. But of course, like if you don't have any work experience and stuff, maybe use like, I don't know, sports that you've done, or like teamwork. That's like an example that you could use. I don't know, like that's sort of the things that I would go for.
That's really valuable, and I think loads of people take so much like from that, because I think what you're talking about there, like extracting, we go through life so often and we neglect what we actually have achieved. Like we always think it's actually the big stuff that needs to be spoken about, but actually that there's so many micro moments in our lives that we don't think about. So that's probably why reflecting on everything that you've done and trying to pick out the bits that actually you might not think at the time are that important, but they'll actually change you. Like going into a shop and asking for a job at in a paper shop, like that is actually a big moment in life, because that's your first step of like going out to the world and going like, this is who I am, and can I be of use and of service to you? Love it. So that's really useful. I want to know about also what that apprenticeship looked like at Bidwells. Okay. So like on a day to day, so what was the role again?
So I was a recruitment apprentice, but my job title was talent acquisition apprentice.
Okay, cool. So what did that look like then? What did the journey of, so how long was it?
It was, essentially it's 12 months, the course, but I always think with apprenticeships they do normally run a little bit longer.
Okay.
So they'll say it's 12 months when really it's 15.
Okay.
So I finished that about 4 or 5 months ago now, so late last year.
Oh, nice. Okay, so pretty recent.
Yeah, so it's pretty recent. It's what I needed. I needed something like to keep me driven, so I had to do my learning online. Some apprenticeships inside or outside of Bidwells, obviously, like you can go and like go to college for the every day a week or whatever. But mine was all based online, so I had a tutor that I had a call with like every month.
Nice.
And she was really helpful, and she would like talk me through what I needed to do, what my goals were, and she was very direct and like I just got it done and that was it. And I had like it was, a lot of it was sort of like taking information, like watching like an online lecture basically, making notes and then doing a quiz at the end, and then I had to submit like this massive, huge, like I don't even know how many pages it was. It was like a case study of my work and what I'd done already whilst I was an apprentice. And then that was basically what they assessed me on at the end. So yeah, and then you have a call and you have to like talk through your job with them as well. So they like make sure that you match the criteria essentially to the qualification. So it's a little bit of a different one because a lot of people go to college, like I said, like a day a week, or do a degree apprenticeship where you go to university, and that would have been a lot more work than what I had to do because mine was a lower level one. So yeah.
Okay, so that's the theory side of things. What did the practical side look like? So you said obviously you enjoy learning through doing. What were you doing on a day-to-day basis? Yeah,
so like when I first started, I was pretty much thrown in the deep end. Like I remember sitting in interviews like in my first week and I was like, what's going on? Like, how am I here, sort of thing.
Nice.
Obviously I had people with me that had that experience already from doing interviews in the past, but I was there like adding a question in or two at the end to be like, oh, maybe we should have asked that. And then I'd like ask the candidate and I'd be so nervous. Like I was interviewing these people and I'd be so nervous and I'd be like, oh my God, what's going on? But that was a really good way for me to just go for it and like sort of learn how to recruit and how to interview, because you don't want the candidate sat there thinking, why is the interviewer so nervous? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, things like that. I think what I most struggled with when I first started was calling people, because I don't know, a lot of young people I think you find nowadays get nervous speaking on the phone. Like nobody wants to pick up the phone and call the doctors or call whoever. Whereas like I just have to do that. Like I was thrown in the deep end, I'd have like a table and all my team would be there and I'd be on the phone and I'd be stuttering because I was like worried about what I was going to say if I was going to ask the wrong questions. But within like a month, 2 months, I was like flying with it, like just chatting to people, like pick up the customer service skills. It's like that side of things that I really enjoy because it's like the doing, obviously. Yeah. So.
But it's funny that you say that at first you felt really nervous about it. So how did you break through that initial potential fear or anxiety about what might happen, and then you almost step into yourself and feel really confident about it?
Yeah, so it's one of them things. I think I'm quite an open person. So with the team, I would just say, I get really nervous about this, or I'm really worried. And they'd be like, okay, well, why don't you take this approach? Or why don't you think about this? So I remember I was going to like my first conference, like in Milton Keynes. I can't even remember when it was. I think it was a few months into my job. And my boss was driving us and she said to me, right, so what are you actually worried about? And then I'd tell her and she'd be like, but what are the chances of that actually happening? And if it does happen, what's the consequence? Is it that bad? Like, no, it's not. Like, just go for it. Like, there's too many things that could go wrong that you could think about. And instead of worrying about all of that, you should just literally go for it. Like, don't let your mind, like, ruin it for you, like, essentially. Because I think that's what I was doing. Like, I'd call people and I'd be like, oh, no, like, what if I don't know, like, forget this or don't ask them that? And then afterwards I'd be like, well, if I did forget that, then couldn't I just follow up in, like, the next couple of days and call them again? Like, it doesn't look that bad. It looks like I'm keeping engaged. Like, do you know what I mean? I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful for someone listening because, like you say, don't let your mind play tricks on
Yeah.
you. And that initial, I think if anyone's ever like tried to do something amazing in their life or something new, yeah, you do get that feeling of, I think when you experience that feeling of uncertainty or nervousness, one, I think it's really positive because one, it shows you care. If you weren't nervous, you wouldn't care. And two, that's when you know you're potentially leaving your comfort zone, and that's a really cool place to be because that's where you're growing. Like there's I forgot what it's called. There's a certain like graph, and have you ever like felt in flow, like in life, like similar to when you felt at ease? Have you ever felt where time you like might be doing an activity and time just goes like that?
Yes, yeah.
So that's well, they've defined that thing as flow. So if your level of expertise is higher than the activity you're doing, then you'll feel bored because it's easy and you're just like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
Whereas if your level of potential expertise is lower than the activity, you might be in a stack. If the activity is really hard and your level of expertise is a little bit lower, then you might feel really anxious, and that's where you're like, oh my god, I literally can't do this, literally can't do this. Whereas flow is that sweet spot where the activity is just a little bit higher than your expertise, so like you're having to concentrate, but not to the point where you feel extremely anxious. And I think that, don't get me wrong, there's sometimes where you might be in that anxiety phase.
Yes.
But it's having the kind of composure to calm yourself and then, like you say, just go for it. Because either way, maybe the question you got to ask yourself is, what if I don't act?
Yeah.
And what is the consequence of that? But then what if I do? Like, you're only kind of going to get a positive, because if you do act and maybe you don't potentially achieve what you wanted to go out, you're going to learn from that experience if you reflect on it.
Yeah.
But that's really useful. So from there, then, well, what's the culture like at Bidwells? Like how did you feel like embedding yourself into the organisation?
It just felt so natural. Like I got in there, and obviously I'm in like an amazing team, and I still am. Like when I first started, I thought, wow, these like some inspirational women like that I work with. But yeah, it's just one of them environments where I can express any worries that I might have, because at the end of the day, I've only been in my role. It sounds like a little while, but 2 years. I'm still learning so much, so I feel able to question anything or open any like new doors or make any suggestions. I'm free to do so whenever I want. The actual like office is just amazing. Like the one that I work in, I absolutely love it. It's
great breakfast.
Great breakfast. So yeah, like got the on-site cafe and all of that. But yeah, no, it's just everybody is equal. We all socialise together. We've got like a system where people can work pretty much wherever they want. In the office, you can sit wherever you like people mix all the time. Everyone's always out like chatting on like walks and stuff at lunch. That's which great. Is really nice. It's a lovely environment to work in, definitely.
But that reflective of what you said earlier about how you felt comfortable enough and confident enough to ask questions from the get-go, and then also actually say I think that's one of the most important things as well, saying when you feel a little bit uncomfortable, or you can actually ask questions, like having a culture where you can do that, because one, you'll learn, two, the people will learn about you, and then it'll be growth for them actually facilitating your journey, but two, you'll grow so much more as a result. So actually, that's probably one thing I would say as well, like ask questions, and don't be afraid to feel like you are learning, because actually if you're in a position where you're always doing that, then you are going to learn more than the person that's might experience that internally but it's not showing it. So that is so good. How would you, I know me and Alex and a few of our curious entrepreneurs came and visited you and Gemma last month. Like, if you could summarise how it feels to work at Bidwells in 3 words, what would they be? What comes to mind?
God, it's a difficult one. I don't know. Overall, I think it feels quite surreal to me. Like, because like looking back, if I was to go back to my A-levels and GCSEs and I saw myself like here right now or at work in that office, like on the phone to all these different people, interviewing different people, I wouldn't believe it because I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I had no idea. So I've just fallen into it really. Like, and it's amazing like how sort of having like the right attitude and the right personality sort of for the role can get you somewhere like where I am. So I don't know, like I think it'd be difficult to like pinpoint 3 words how it made me feel. Like, I'm not sure to be honest.
Surreal's a pretty cool one.
Surreal's a good one, yeah, definitely.
So what about your role now then? So, like I know obviously I didn't even know that transition happened only 4 months ago. So has your role changed slightly? Like what and what are you doing? Is there anything that you're doing differently now than what you're doing before?
I think with time, like my style of work has changed massively compared to like what I was like when I first started. I think because I had a day that I dedicated to studying, so I now work every day of the week, which is like fine. And I don't know, like I feel like I've picked up like experience and skills that has made me a lot better at my role. So obviously the transition happened at like January, December time. And I think I've just sort of like thought of more ideas because so I do like the graduate role intakes and the apprenticeship intakes. So I see like in my first one, that was just a learning curve. Like I was like, okay, so this is what I have to do now. Like it was like a process for the year. And now I look back and I'm like, okay, we need to do that differently because it didn't work very well last year. So it's like improving our sort of structures and stuff, which works really nicely.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And like also I think I've got a lot better at like building relationships with people that start with us. So if I have an apprentice come and join like in one of our teams or a graduate, I want to be there to like help them and like advise them on anything. So a lot of them will move down from different locations and stuff. I'm going to check in and see if they've got their house sorted. Like, do you know what I mean?
That's
like
brilliant.
Building that sort of friendship as well as a colleague sort of relationship. It's really important. I've learned because you don't want to neglect someone and then they're starting a job and they're going to think, oh my God, I don't want to start. Like I don't know anyone. I've not spoken to anyone. Like that's the worst thing that could happen. But yeah, no, that's sort of like what I think I've like developed on mostly since the transition into this role, definitely. That's
literally like you are kind of almost like the perfect trailblazer for the organisation, but for what you are doing as well. Like that's so good to see. Obviously, your journey, and then what you've just said there about that relationship and that like the management of people is probably one of the most important things ever. So I think that's so good to hear. Like if I was listening now, I'd be like, I want to work for Bidwells. So how many people do you think you've interviewed in your life so far?
In my life so far?
Obviously, we probably interview like thousands of people on a day-to-day basis, you know what I mean? But like from a working environment, how many do you think?
Oh my God, I don't know. So I don't know, I can't even think. Like this month I've probably... Sometimes, like, I don't need to be there. So it's important that someone from HR or, like, in recruitment is there for, like, the first stage or the second stage. Like, we need to meet them at some point. But often, like, I will set the interview up and, like, the hiring manager will just go in and, like, chat to them for the last stage to make sure that everything's all good and crystal clear. I don't know. I'd like to put a guess on so far, probably. Do you mean, like, telephone interviews as well?
Anything.
Oh, if it's telephone interviews included, I think 1,000 people.
Really?
Yeah, like I talk to so many people on the phone.
Crazy.
Yeah, because when we have graduate intakes, you've got to think all of them people want a job at the same time. So they're all applying. Okay. So, and it's like obviously like kind of niche jobs. So like surveying and stuff. Yeah. If we're recruiting for one of them, they're all going to go for it. And I can't judge so-and-so because they've got like a month more work experience than somebody else. It's important that I talk to them and get a feel for their personality and see if they come across well and they're like a good fit for us. Do you know what I mean? Like getting that sort of ball rolling early on is important. But no, yeah, I think that would be my guess if you included telephone interviews because I'm always talking to people on the phone.
That is crazy. You've interviewed potentially like 1,000 people in your mind.
Yeah.
You said earlier about one word that stood out to me was like attitude.
Yes.
From your experience and like observations of either you being on a panel and watching people get interviewed, or you interviewing someone else, what are the top 3 things that you see the most successful candidates have
Okay.
in an interview?
So I think if we were to talk about specifically, if I'm talking about interviewing for an apprenticeship, is to pinpoint, it's like I've said it before, like if someone's got no work experience and no skill set, like from like doing different activities, different like achievements, whatever, then if they get an interview, I'm going to think, right, this is all sort of riding on how they perform in this interview. Like,
Right, okay.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would look out for people's body language, like someone that is engaging, like can sort of, well, I don't know, like isn't slumped in their seat and doesn't look like, because you sometimes get people that just look like they don't want to be there, and that's really like, it plays a big part, body language, I think, in an interview. Second thing I'd probably say is people, like if you're chatting to somebody and you ask them a question, and I know it's difficult because it's a nerve-wracking experience, I think it's important that they have things prepared to answer with, because sometimes you ask a question and they'll be like, I don't know. So if I said to them, oh, like, what do you know about Bidwells? Have you found anything else about the team? Like, did you do some research? I always tell people before they come in, please do some research, because it's going to help you, like it's going to benefit you in the interview. And then if they've still not got anything and they're like, oh, I don't know, like it's just not going to work out. Yeah, I think that's one thing.
Okay. But
everyone like should be able to access that info, you know, research it. If you've applied for the job, you can look at the job advert. And then the third thing, I just think having like questions prepared and stuff is really important. So at the end, if we're saying like, you know, is there anything you want to know? It's so nice to see someone that's like engaged and so interested that they've like prepared, like, I don't know, even if it's like, oh, what's the culture like here, or what do you guys enjoy about your jobs, or just make it like, be chatty, like make that conversation. Don't make it, I don't like interviewing in like a rigid format, so it's like it feels awkward and it feels like everyone feels like on edge. I want it to like free flow and be more of a chat then rather than anything, and if they've got that prepared, it works.
Okay, nice. Like so you speak about obviously the like qualification side of things, that has part to play, but obviously if that's not the case and they're just getting started, then it's about actually how they flow in the thing. I'm interested as well, like like you speak about, obviously there's that conversation around skills or whatever. Part of what we're doing is like almost turning the word skills into characteristics.
Yes.
So let's just say someone literally has no experience. What characteristics would you look for? So obviously body language, being curious is probably the last one. What would be the last one? Like, because I understand, like I get it where some people might freeze.
Yes.
And they might have I don't know, potentially not, because they might have done the research and
it's so hard.
It's difficult.
Yeah, it is difficult. Like you sit down with these people and some of them have worked themselves up so much for this interview, and it almost ruins it for them because they've overthought every single aspect of it. Like I was saying earlier, like before I was calling candidates, I was overthinking every single aspect of it. They've done the same thing. It's hard. I think someone that's engaging is really important. I think that's the word I'd use. I think even if they're shy, you can tell when someone's interested, and you can tell when they want to be there and they're keen. And I think that's really attractive to an employer. Whereas like sometimes you'll get people that have like maybe, I don't know, like their mum's like applied for them and they've just gone to the interview because they felt like they had to, and then they don't want to be there, which is like, you know when that's the case normally. So I think engaged is
nice. That links in nicely with what we do. So like our 3 pillars are just the way we work as an organisation. I engage with young people, inspire them, and then activate them. So there are kind of 3 layers. So links nicely with the language. So let's move on around what we're doing collaboratively as like our organisation. So Bidwells are sponsoring Inspire to Ignite for the next year. So basically, we will be representing Bidwells wherever we go. You will obviously be getting involved at our events. You are obviously our Ignite Champion for Bidwells, which we're really grateful for. We've got some really cool, exciting stuff happening towards the end of August, where we'll be taking 5 to 10 curious entrepreneurs to Bidwells for a 1 week work placement, which is like, we've mapped it out. It's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of maybe share what your role within that will be, and then I'll kind of explain what I'll be getting involved in as well?
Yeah, of course. So obviously Gemma and I and you guys have been preparing for it, and we've been putting ideas together and thinking about what we want to do. From our point of view, like, we want to bring people in who don't know about property and want to learn about property, and sort of see like the different career paths that you can go down, and just get a feel for what it might be like to actually work with us. Because I think a lot of these days, like, you'll go and you'll say, oh, can I get some work experience or whatever, or people will go and do work experience, and like, I think we were chatting about it earlier, and you're literally just making the teas.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We want them to learn and like take something away from it. I want the students to understand like what a property consultancy does, for one, but I also want them to feel more confident within themselves about, you know, going forwards for interviews, for whether, even if it's not in property, like, I want them to feel better about sort of how they can perform. So I think Gemma and I were saying that we want to do an hour or an afternoon dedicated to like interview skills and CV writing, and just like how they sort of come across, and like talking them through the different things that they can do differently, maybe, I don't know, in interviews and stuff like that. But yeah, no, the whole week is just like a experience for them, so that they can fully understand the different teams and how it might, because some of them might want to do something like sales, and then the other might want to do planning, which is so different, like complete opposite ends of the scales. Like, I just want them to sort of see that for themselves, if that makes sense. Yeah,
I'm so excited for it. Like, just like the week, from my perspective, what I'll be doing is I'll be helping the young people to embed themselves in their culture, which I don't think will be very hard at all, just with how open you guys are. We'll kind of have some like icebreakers on the first day, like Curious Jenga, have some workshops where they'll be able to open up to each other, but also to the team, and vice versa. Like, all of the Bidwells team that are going to be there on the day will be getting involved in these as well. And then we're basically taking them on the journey to actually pitch to the Bidwells leadership team their own kind of project, their own housing project, which is so cool. So speaking with the rural team to pick the land, then the commercial team to layer in those buildings, and the residential team. So it's going to be such a cool week, and I'm so looking forward to it, and just getting the right young people, the right mixture, which we've done with previous experiences there. And I'm really looking forward to it. But also, to your point, I'll challenge you. Like, you might say like sales and planning are different, but also, in order to like obviously put plans together, you need to sell it. You need to sell the vision. So there's so much crossover there.
Definitely.
But there's going to be so much we're going to get involved in. Like, we've got Curious Corner, and we're basically taking over 25% of a careers fair in early July, which we'll be getting Bidwells in as well. So there's so much going on.
It's exciting, yeah.
Last question then. Well, actually, I've got 2 more questions.
Cool.
What's your vision for yourself going forwards? That could be like personally, or like with Bidwells. What vision do you have for yourself going forwards?
I think I've come like so far already. Like, I'm so happy with sort of where I've got to, but I love the focus on like early careers and that side of things. So obviously, looking after people, because I was saying to you earlier, I think because I'm still only 21, it wasn't long ago where I was in these like the same boat as the people that are doing A-levels and GCSEs and whatever. So I feel like I've got that on my side, so I can give them that advice on what to do and stuff like that. I think, keeping that focus on like early careers and how we can improve our structures and how we can improve our intakes, and engaging with schools. Obviously, we do so much of it already, but moving into areas that we haven't sort of reached yet is really important to us. I think just improving the whole process, and I would like to find a way where we can interview people so that they don't feel so nervous, like, and that we can make it so it's, you know, completely fair and everyone's sort of like on the same, I don't know, structure of interview and stuff like that. So it's just one of them things that I'd like to work on as, I think that's my overall sort of goal, which is, my focus.
Cool. And I know I love that actually, that like you're now thinking about, right, how can we improve the structures almost to serve your old self as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we also speaking briefly before about setting up your own thing on the side. So maybe we could do a part 2. Once we've done the experience in August, we might be in a position where we might have a little side hustle.
Hope so, yeah.
Cool. So my last question is, if you had like a minute to speak to your 16-year-old self, what would you say to them with the knowledge you know now?
If I could speak to my 16-year-old self, probably tell her to sort her hair out. It's quite awful. I think I'd say chill out, like just relax, because I was like stressing about everything, thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself? Like, where am I going to go? I'm going to be a Waitrose forever, which, you know what I mean? A lot of people do that and it's not for everyone, but a lot of people love that, but it was not for me whatsoever. I think, I'd just tell myself, calm down, like everything's going to work out, because things do fall into place. If you put the work in, like, to what you're doing and just focus on it, like, you'll get there eventually. But I think it's one of them things, isn't it? Because when I was there in that situation, like, I would never have been able to see, like, where I am now. Like, I couldn't have predicted it. But if I could go back, I'd just say chill out.
Okay, chill out and let it flow.
Yes, definitely.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You're going to add so much value. There's a lot of brain nuggets there, I like to call, that we can share with them as well. If you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please give it a rating. Where can we find, how can people find you?
LinkedIn is a good one for me. Obviously on like all the socials, like Instagram. And then if there's anyone that wants any advice or anything, you can always drop me an email. So could you put that?
Yeah, of course. We'll put her LinkedIn and Georgia's just like the email in the description as well. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please give it a little rating, hopefully a 5-star. Drop a review. Tell Georgia a bit of value that she's provided you that you're going to take away with you. And I look forward to speaking to and listening to you very time soon. I can't even speak. Bye.
Thank you.